Our top focus remains on the ongoing escalation between the United States, Israel and Iran. Oil prices have surged past $115 a barrel as tensions continue to intensify over the weekend, including widespread destruction of energy infrastructure across Iran and the Gulf saw markets take rapid fright. With tankers unable or unwilling to transit the Strait of Hormuz, analysts warn prices could exceed a massive $150 a barrel if the shutdown lasts until end of March. The rise is already pushing US petrol, jet fuel, and fertilizer costs. Asian consumers are bidding up US gas prices with tankers turning around mid-Atlantic. The Iran war has now disrupted 20% of global oil supply for 10 straight days, more than double the previous record set during the Suez Crisis of 1956. Iran's Revolutionary Guard, meanwhile, has warned oil could soar to $200 a barrel if the US and Israel continue their campaign. World stock markets are tumbling in response. Trump, meanwhile, has dismissed the price spike as a very small price to pay, offering little comfort to consumers already feeling it at the pump. Now, in its 10th day, the US-Israel war on Iran has widened dramatically with strikes on oil storage and refining facilities for the very first time. Earlier, South Era Network's Leticia Castro spoke with Carol Nakle, who is the CEO of Crystal Energy. Listen in.
Thank you, Sahil. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important energy corridors in the world. About a fifth of global oil passes through that narrow waterway every single day. Now, with the war between U.S., Israel, and Iran entering its 10th day, attacks on oil depots and refining facilities are raising fears that this could turn into a much larger energy crisis. Some analysts are already warning that if the strait remains disrupted through the end of the month, oil could climb to $150 a barrel or even higher. So what does this all mean for global supply and for prices that consumers will see at the pump? That's the big question that many are asking. For more on this, we're joined by Carol Nakle, CEO of Crystal Energy, joining us from London. Carol, thank you for being with us here at South Era Network. We're seeing oil prices jump sharply as this conflict continues to escalate. From your perspective, how much of this surge is being driven by real supply disruptions, and how much is the market rising, or the pricing itself, in the risk that the Strait of Hormuz could become impassable?
Well, definitely, just before the war started in Iran, we saw prices increasing. And back then they were rising because of the risk premium, because of the fear that the scenario that we are seeing today would happen. And that's exactly what happened. But so today, the price, the higher dollars that you are seeing, the additional dollars that you are seeing in the oil price are the result, not just we still have a risk premium in the prices because people are still wondering what's going to happen next, how much worse the situation can get. So there's definitely an element of that. But the more important factor today is the disruptions that we are seeing in global oil trade because of what's happening in the region, the significant reduction, we had seen almost a halt to traffic of oil and LNG tankers, by the way, through the Strait of Hormuz. But I also want to add to that, so you have the supply disruptions in terms of the passage of the oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz, but also you do have another layer of escalation, that is the attacks on the energy infrastructure in the region and important producers such as Saudi Arabia and the UAE. But I want to just highlight also one more aspect about the implications of for these countries when they cannot send their oil abroad to global markets through the Strait of Hormuz. Some of them are being forced to shut down or reduce production from some key oil producing fields simply because they are running out of storage capacity. And that is also worsening the situation in terms of supply disruptions to global markets.
Right now, how quickly could global supply feel the impact when it comes to this?
We are already feeling it, right? When you see prices jumping, I mean, earlier this morning, they were just around $120 a barrel, and that you easily added $30 in just 2 days. And that is a lot. That tells me that the market is really concerned about the implications of those supply disruptions on global trade. And as such, what does that mean also for global economy? And on the latter point, we also saw share prices in many regions around the world also struggling. So there is a lot of uncertainty today, in addition to the disruption, it's creating some kind of mini panic. It's not yet a fully fledged panic. We're not there yet, but definitely everybody's watching nervously.
Of course, a major concern for so many now. With from a market perspective, I want to ask you, what are the key factors that will determine whether the prices stabilize or they continue to climb even more?
It all depends on how the situation will unfold. Are we going to see a worsening of the attacks? Are we going to see more energy infrastructure being targeted? Are we going to see the Gulf producers dragged into the war from just being by just trying to defend themselves against those attacks to perhaps being dragged into attacking back? For example, Iran? That would be for me the worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to oil, I think that at the moment, yes, there is a widespread panic, but not as bad as we had, for example, a few years ago when Russia invaded Ukraine. And also we are hearing about the potential release of the strategic petroleum reserve that can take away some of the heat that you are seeing today in oil markets.
Yeah. Now, I also, of course, want to touch on the consumers that are watching this so they can understand a bit deeper on how this affects their pockets, especially in energy importing countries. How soon could that translate into higher costs for everyday things? We're talking about gasoline, air travel, and of course, food.
We are feeling it already, but perhaps we're having a taster of what could happen if the situation escalates further. So that's a key metric for us at this stage. If the whole war ends, let's say, in a matter of days or even a few weeks, and then the outcome is better than what we had there, so we have more stability, more peace in the Middle East, then you would see a less impact. You don't feel the same impact as if you have the war dragging on further and longer, and there are no alternatives for the oil and gas supplies coming out of the region. Then the risk becomes more bigger, more notable, and the consumers all around the world will feel the impact. It's not a pleasant situation to be in, but it definitely can get worse. Let's hope it does not. Right. But all importing countries, especially those that don't have much alternative, especially those that did not build a lot of commercial or strategic reserves when prices were low, for example, they are more exposed than others. And of course, the poorer economies, especially in Asia, for example, they will suffer more because of their purchasing power to pay for these higher prices. It's not the same if you are a rich economy who can afford these higher prices.
Of course, and this inevitably ends up affecting so many industries along the way. Now, what would have to happen in order for those prices that we are seeing, those high-level prices, to start going down, in your opinion?
Definitely an end to the military actions in the Middle East, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. But even before we see the full reopening, you are already hearing news coming from the Middle East that countries such as Saudi Arabia and the UAE, who have some routes to some pipeline infrastructure to direct some of the oil, not all of it, but not a negligible quantity, to those other passages to bypass the Strait of Hormuz. So once we see that coming into the market, then we would see the heat on prices reducing. But I would say the ideal scenario we would like to see is an end to all the hostilities in the region, but more importantly, a lasting stability. We don't want to be on a roller coaster that one period we have stability, another period we have attacks, because this kind of roller coaster is also not good for long-term economic planning. So this would be the best scenario, to have stability and peace, and we would go back to pre-war conditions where prices were in the low 60s, or at best in the in the high 60s or low 70s, and that seemed to be the level that was manageable for producers and consumers alike.
Of course, we're seeing that instability affecting so many different things. Carol Nachle, CEO of Crystal Energy, thank you very much for your time and, of course, for your insight in this matter.
Thank you very much.
So as you heard, if the war lasts for a few days, then you might not feel much on your wallet. But if it stretches beyond that, then your household budget might come under pressure. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump is now demanding Iran's unconditional surrender, though US intelligence warns strikes are unlikely to topple the Iranian government. Almost amidst the escalating conflict, after days of speculation, secret meetings, and an assembly of experts bombed mid-session, Iran finally has a new supreme leader. But the man chosen to fill his father's shoes is a relatively obscure cleric who largely operated in the shadows with no established political base, no proven record of leadership, and no clear mandate beyond his name. So who is Mojtaba Khamenei? How did he come to hold one of the most powerful positions in the Middle East? And what does his rise mean for the conflict ahead? This report from South Era Network's Michael Shaguri answers those questions. Take a look.
This is the moment Iranian state television announced that the country has a new supreme leader. Just after midnight in Tehran, broadcasters announced that Mojtaba Khamenei has been chosen to succeed his father, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as the leader of the Islamic Republic. The decision was made by the Assembly of Experts, the 88-member clerical body responsible for selecting Iran's supreme leader. Mojtaba Khamenei, a mid-ranking cleric with close ties to the powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, had long been viewed as a leading contender to succeed his father. His appointment signals that hardline factions remain firmly in control in Tehran, just over a week into Iran's conflict with the United States and Israel. Political analyst Alex Vitanka from the Middle East Institute says the choice sends a message to Washington.
Whatever is left of the Islamic Republic leadership clearly is saying a big no to Donald J. Trump. They are instead opting for continuity inside their regime. And in fact, I think they're doing more than that. They're essentially saying to Trump that, they're not going to be persuaded by his pressure campaign that we're seeing unfold, which is happening obviously mostly militarily, but also through the political messaging that Donald Trump has sent to Tehran over the course of the last 8-9 days now. So the appointment of Mojtaba Khamenei is the reflection of the fact that the hardliners in that system now have the upper hand. Not only are they saying they're going to continue this fight, at least in the short term militarily, but they're also saying politically they have a game plan. And that, as far as I can tell, in Washington should be a wake-up call, because whatever political agenda President Trump had in terms of changing Iran, right now that agenda is not happening.
The position of supreme leader gives Mojtaba Khamenei the final authority over Iran's military, judiciary, and state institutions. His father, Ali Khamenei, who ruled Iran for more than 3 decades, was killed in one of the first strikes launched against Iran just over a week ago. On Sunday, Israel's military said it will target any successor of the slain Iranian ruler, as well as those involved in the selection process. For now, there seems to be no end in sight for this ongoing conflict.
That was South Era Network's Michael Shaguri. For more on this, let's go across to Daniela Seferi. She is an independent Iran journalist. My first question to you is that Mojtaba has spent decades deliberately staying out of the public eye. Does he have the political credibility to hold this role? Daniela, I'll request you to just switch off your mute.
Can you hear me now?
Very clearly. Please go ahead. My question to you was, does Mojtaba have the political credibility to go on with the kind of big responsibility that has suddenly come on his shoulders?
He has some kind of credibility. It's just different than his father's credibility. His father, Ali Khamenei, built his power over decades and stabilized it. Mojtaba Khamenei still has to manage this. But what he has is the support of the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, which de facto appointing Mojtaba Khamenei means giving more power to the IRGC. So Mojtaba has some credibility, even though it's not as powerful as his father's. But people have been saying that he actually has been managing his father's affair in back behind the scenes. So he has the experience, and in the society of Iran, he is known as being even more radical than his father was. I want to remember that his father is responsible for mass killings, not only in the beginning of the year, but throughout the last decades, and not only in Iran, but throughout the region. And Mojtaba is alleged to be the person who is behind all these massacres in the background.
His father spent 35 years building loyalty within the Revolutionary Guard. In that sense, is he taking power at the worst possible moment with his base untested and his country at war?
It's difficult to say. Obviously, being at war does not help him gain the power, but on the other hand, he can be as radical as he wants, because for the IRGC, it's clear that the enemy right now is even more the US and Israel than ever before, but also the people in Iran, which experience repression in the shadow of the war. Media is not paying a lot of attention to the human rights crisis in Iran. People have been getting threats via text messages not to participate against with protest against the regime, not to post stuff on social media. That is like supposed to help the enemy. That's how they frame it. So he's at the point where he has to survive the war. For the Islamic Republic, winning the war means simply surviving the war. But for the people in Iran, this could be the worst scenario, that the war is over, but the regime is still there.
And finally, how is the West reading this appointment? And does it in any manner whatsoever change anything about how the United States and Israel approach the next phase of this war?
I don't think that this will change at all. But the problem is that Donald Trump changes his war goals with every interview that he is giving. Once he's saying that his goal is regime change and democracy for Iran, and then the next minute he says it's about nuclear program in general. It's very tactically from Donald Trump to change his war goals so that he can win the war at any time that he chooses that he fulfilled his goals. But for the people in Iran, it does not change whether it's Ali Khamenei or his son, whether it's anyone else. They just want the Ayatollahs gone. They want this regime gone. And as I said, it would be very fatal for the people in Iran if this war ends and the regime is still standing, because they will take revenge out on their own society.
Thank you so much. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for helping us decode Mojtaba Khamenei and also understand how he plans to now take forward. As I said, as we have been pointing out at South Era Network, this is really one of the toughest moments for him to have taken over. And we'll keep a close track of how it proceeds from here on. From Iran, let's take you to Lebanon. A new report from Human Rights Watch is raising alarms over the use of white phosphorus in southern Lebanon. The rights group says that white phosphorus was fired over homes and farmland in the town of Yahumor, sparking fears of fires, civilian harm, and long-term damage to agricultural land. South Era Network correspondent Stephanie Haddad has more.
Israel has been accused by Human Rights Watch of unlawfully firing white phosphorus munitions over residential areas in South Lebanon. The group says the March 3rd attack targeted the town of Yahmur, raining incendiary fragments across homes and farmland. White phosphorus ignites instantly on contact with oxygen, burning at temperatures hot enough to set buildings, fields, and vegetation on fire. Human Rights Watch says using airburst white phosphorus in populated areas is inherently indiscriminate and a direct violation of international humanitarian law. But the devastation goes far beyond the fires. In South Lebanon, where agriculture is the backbone of the community, the impact is generational. Farmers say burning fragments landed directly on cultivated land. Experts warn the chemical residue can poison the soil, killing crops like olives, tobacco, and vegetables, while stunting future harvests. For families who live off this land, the damage doesn't just burn a field, it threatens their entire food supply.
Farmers here know too well that the danger doesn't vanish when the fires go out. They fear the chemical residue left in the soil would contaminate future harvests. During the 2024 war, farmers in the south saw their produce deemed unsafe for consumption. Entire shipments were rejected from export markets, including the European Union. Many here fear the same could happen again.
Human Rights Watch is now calling on Israel's key allies, including the United States, the United Kingdom, and Germany, to suspend military aid and arms transfers. They are also urging targeted sanctions against officials implicated in what it describes as grave violations of international law.
Heart goes out to hundreds and thousands of people who have been left homeless and their agricultural land also now destroyed. As Stephanie pointed out in that very concerning report, these are grave violations of the international law. Remains to be seen what action, if any, will be taken against these acts. Shifting focus to South Asia now, where Nepal today is witnessing a political revolution. Rapper turned politician Balen Shah is set to become the country's youngest ever prime minister. And as South Era Network Sara Gill's, this report will show celebrations have already begun. Take a look.
Balen Shah is no stranger to crowds chanting his name. The former rapper turned politician is now increasingly likely to be Nepal's next prime minister. And while the final vote count is still underway, some of his supporters have already begun their celebrations.
Hope we will not forget all his promises and will work on the behalf of people. Wish him good luck. Thank you. We trusted you. Now you should not play with our trust. We love you, Balen. Okay, bye-bye.
That trust comes from a Gen Z political uprising that saw the removal of four-time Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli in September. Oli's party had long been accused of dynastic politics and corruption. But the protests that saw his demise also turned deadly, and at least 77 people were killed. Shah quickly emerged as the preferred choice of Nepal's younger generation. Analysts say that it is his reputation and promise of a fairer political system that resonated with a generation frustrated by the old guard.
I can tell you that because all these people are new, they don't have any charges of corruption. They are very committed people. They have done very well in their professions. From the area they come into politics. And the organization is very new.
For now, Shah is receiving something of a rock star welcome. But how long that enthusiasm lasts really depends on if he's able to fulfill key campaign pledges. Pledges of economic reform and foreign policy agendas. And one pledge that is particularly important to the many young Nepalis is the justice for those killed during the Gen Z revolution.
That was Sara Gill reporting on the mood on the ground. What a moment for Nepal. And let's now take a deep dive into these developments with Sanjeev Sadgaina, former editor of the Kathmandu Post. What I really want to understand from you is, he's a former rapper, now said to be Nepal's youngest ever prime minister. Fair enough to call this a tectonic shift in Nepal's politics?
Oh, absolutely. I would call it massive or colossal. To be frank, it's unprecedented in Nepal's recent history. The last time Nepal had a similar two-thirds majority for any party was in 1959. What makes this shift significant is that it represents a clear break from the decades-old political cycle that entrenched corruption, misgovernance, and patronage politics. Voters this time appear to have decisively rejected that old guard that fueled the system.
They clearly have, and the message from the young voters to older parties is also clear. Enough is enough. Is this the end game for Nepal's grand old political outfits, the Nepali Congress, CP and UML, and the Communist Party of Nepal, Maoist Center? Is it over for them?
For now, it looks like it's over. The message is very clear, as a matter of fact, this time. The fact that voters rallied behind the relatively new Rashtriya Swatantra Party of Balen Shah, it clearly means that voters wanted to send a message to the old guard, the traditional parties, that you have outlived your utility and we want new blood in Nepali politics. But one thing we need to keep in mind that Nepali political parties have gone through ups and downs in the past also. Some of the parties have lost their elections and bounced back again. But this time, it however looks like the way they have been swept out, the traditional parties, it looks like it will be difficult for them to come back. And this time, the Rashtriya Swatantra Party has emerged as the biggest force ever Nepal has seen. So it will be ruling for 5 years. So for 5 years, these old parties have to sit in the opposition.
And in politics, as they say, never rule out any politician. And I recall during last Nepal elections, I was covering there in Nepal, and KP Sharma Oli, speaking to foreign correspondents, told us that you can never rule me out of Nepal's politics outrightly. Now, in that report filed by South Era Network, Sara Gill, there was one young Nepali citizen. His name is Ayush. He said that in addressing Balen Shah, that we trusted you, but now please don't break our trust. So clearly, expectations from Mr. Shah are extremely high. What challenges will the new leadership face as it now tries to lead Nepal?
Absolutely. Challenges begin immediately after the Rashtriya Swatantra Party forms the government. And the young guy was, the young boy was right to say that we'll keep a watch on you. The biggest challenge will be managing the enormous expectations voters now have from the Rashtriya Swatantra Party. When a party like the Rashtriya Swatantra Party comes to power on promise of sweeping change in Nepal, people expect results. And quickly they expect results. But governing is much harder than campaigning. They will have to work through a deeply entrenched bureaucracy, institutions that move slowly, and political networks built over decades. There is also a question of experience, as a matter of fact. Many figures in this political formation are relatively new to governing. So translating reform agenda into concrete policy will be a real test. And finally, maintaining public trust is crucial, because the Gen protests happened because of the widening public trust between people and the politicians. So the real test begins now. Winning an election on the promise of change is one thing, but delivering is another thing. If they succeed, this could mark the beginning of a new political era for Nepal. If they struggle, it could deepen public disillusionment with politics altogether. So the stakes are extremely high in Nepal at this moment, not just for the new leadership of the Rashtriya Swatantra Party, but for Nepal's democratic system itself.
So stakes are high. The question is, can Balen Shah deliver? Thank you so much for helping us make sense of those political developments. From Nepal, let's now take you to neighboring India. As if breathing in New Delhi wasn't already a severe crisis, a new report reveals that the capital's water supply is heavily contaminated. Experts call it a public health disaster in the making. South Era Network's Priyata Brajbasi has the full story.
For New Delhi's 30 million residents, the air pollution crisis has likely reduced their lifespan by nearly 10 years. But now the threat is even more imminent. Recent tap water tests conducted in the city have detected E. coli and fecal coliform, the kind of bacteria found in sewage water. In a sample of 18 residential locations, nearly half failed basic safety standards, and 3 samples were so alarmingly contaminated that they were not even safe for bathing in.
The scariest part is that all this while, all these years, we knew that the river Yamuna, which is the main source of water, actually contained a high amount of fecal coliform. The government always told us that actually post-treatment, the drinking water supply or the water that we actually get in our tap is actually cleaner. But this entire report clearly talks about how there is beyond permissible limit of coliform level found in various parts.
Residents frequently complain about yellow, grey or even black water coming out of their taps. Some say the water smells foul and is not safe for everyday use. With the city's population growing and pipelines becoming older, worries about sewage mixing with drinking water are increasing. Delhi consistently ranks amongst the world's most polluted city, with air quality often 8 times worse than WHO's safety limits. For 90% of residents, health issues caused by deteriorating air quality have become part of daily life. While the city offers a vibrant, historic and culturally rich lifestyle, its livability is severely hindered by toxic air, crumbling infrastructure, a waste management crisis and now clean water challenges. For many, the biggest failure isn't the broken pipes, but the lack of accountability and a long-term government plan to tackle the pollution problem. Priyata Brajwasi, South Era Network, New Delhi.
And there must be accountability set in. Just go to X or any social media platform, try searching for locations like Uttam Nagar or even South Delhi, which is considered to be more posh area of the national capital. People are putting up videos of water coming into their taps, which is yellow in color. As my colleague, as South Era Networks, Priyata Rajwasi was pointing out, there are harmful bacteria also found in them. In fact, the entire region, it seems, is facing one crisis or the other. Because look what's happening in India's neighborhood. United Nations says more than 100,000 people have now been displaced by the conflict between Pakistan and Afghanistan, a war that began with Pakistani airstrikes on militant camps last month and has since spiraled into what Islamabad itself called an open war. The fighting erupted after Pakistan struck targets in Nangarhar, Paktika and Khost, accusing the Taliban of harboring militants responsible for attacks on Pakistani soil. Kabul retaliated, and the conflict quickly spread, with Pakistan striking 46 locations across Afghanistan, including the Bagram Air Base. There is no sign of rapprochement, and the timing could not be more dangerous. The war in Iran threatens to aggravate the already escalating tensions between the two neighbors, with Iran sharing a border with both countries, and unrest they are risking spill over into Pakistan's Baluchistan province. This region, as the United Nations put it, is piling misery on misery. We'll continue to track that story for you. Let's take a look at other stories around the world. New York City police said Sunday an explosive device thrown during protests outside Mayor Zohran Mamdani's home could have caused serious injury or death. The jar, packed with nuts, bolts and screws, was hurled by a counter-protester but extinguished before exploding. New York police are working with the FBI and the U.S. Department of Justice on the investigation. Colombians headed to the polls Sunday to elect a new Congress and chose presidential candidates, with more than 41 million eligible voters and over 100,000 law enforcement officers deployed nationwide. The vote sets the stage for May's presidential election as Gustavo Petro, constitutionally barred from his second term, prepares to leave office in August. Norwegian police said Sunday an overnight explosion at the US Embassy in Oslo may have been an act of terrorism, though investigators said other causes remain possible. The blast in the early hours caused minor damage to the public entrance, but no injuries were reported. The US State Department said it was aware and investigating. To the world of sports now, where Pakistan's Super League has a new contender with an interesting name, Pindies. The name has equal measure of love and hate from fans, as we reported in the past. Now, Pindies has also got a new logo. Here's Hunain Amin getting us more interesting details about that in this very special report. Take a look.
In Rawalpindi, cricket isn't just a sport, it's a way of life. And tonight, that love for the game meets the city's vibrant culture in a celebration full of music, color, and Pindi pride as the city unveils Pindi's logo. Well, its graffiti is still in the making because we have gotten here early. It's a privilege, really. But let's walk you through the heart of Rawalpindi. Was there at any point in this entire trajectory where you thought you would want to cave in because so many memes were churning out, there was so much criticism about the name? So did you think of a new moniker for this team?
Look, we anticipated that sort of a backlash in the initial launch phase of the brand. And it's not very unusual for whenever you launch something new, innovative, that is very much out of the box and very clutter breaking, you anticipate that sort of a backlash. But this is an arc. This is a story of a city that never has anticipated or inclined towards the status quo. It has always come up with its own personality, its own persona, its own color, its own taste, its own dressing, everything unique to its own personality. So we will naturally go towards that arc. Absolutely, I think that meme culture and the troll and all the traction that is getting, that has made Pindi the team of the PSL. As I was mentioning earlier, that there are around 750 global global T20 franchises. There are 50 global leagues, and this is the only one with a single word name. And that might be a little bit unusual. And I also understand that it might be obnoxious for some people, but that's why it stands out.
Before the advent of this team, the erstwhile support of the Rawalpindi people was falling behind the Islamabad team. When did it occur to you and why that you want to carve out a team out of this twin city, another team?
Number one, leagues are built on good derbies around the world. So we are very excited and looking forward to the derby. Islamabad has its own culture. Pindi has its own culture. Naturally, Pindi is hundreds and hundreds of year old city. So it has that depth. Islamabad naturally is 50, 60 year old city, so it does not have that sort of cultural integration to it.
From its die-hard fans to team management and players, everyone here has a story to tell about what it's like to have their very own team.
You know, we Rawalpindians are different. We are built different. So हमारा जो है वो जोश और जज्बा भी दूसरी तरह का है. हर ज़ाहिर है हम जिंदा दिल लोग हैं, उसी तरह हम सेलिब्रेट भी करते हैं जैसे आप माहौल देख रहे हैं. My boys bowl them clean from Karachi to Lahore. मेरे पिंडी के हैं boys mine 6 mine 4.
ये जितना अच्छा लग रहा है उतनी अच्छी सेलिब्रेशन है, उतनी अच्छी परफॉर्मेंस होगी टीम की.
जी इंशाल्लाह हमारे पास जो क्रिकेटर हैं जो हमने खिलाड़ी सेलेक्ट किए, हमें पूरा यकीन है कि इंशाल्लाह पिंडी का नाम रोशन करेंगे.
This music will fade and the lights will dim, but the Pindi's love for cricket will never end. With their new brand identity, new logo reveal, and the whole city behind their team, Pindi's is all set for the new innings. This is Hunain Amin, Rawalpindi, South Arab Network.
Since we are talking about cricket, South Asian champions have gone on to become global champions of cricket as India made history. Playing in front of a packed Narendra Modi Stadium, Surya Kumar Yadav's side clinched a record third T20 World Cup title, delivering a moment of cricket fever across South Asia as they defeated New Zealand by a mammoth 96 runs in the final in Ahmedabad. India made history by clinching 3 firsts, becoming the first team to win the ICC Men's T20 World Cup on home soil, becoming the only team to bag 3 T20 World Cup trophies, and also becoming the only team to win 2 T20 World Cups back-to-back. And now to the world's biggest sporting event, FIFA Football World Cup, which is set to happen in less than 100 days, raising concerns about travel and safety with the Gulf and Middle East region embroiled in an unbridled conflict imposed by US and Israel. Iraq have asked World Football Body FIFA to delay their intercontinental playoff for the FIFA World Cup as the escalating war involving Iran, Israel, and the United States disrupts travel. Head coach Graham Arnold says close airspace and shut embassies mean players cannot leave Iraq or secure visas. And finally, to South Era Network's report viewers, everyone in India and Pakistan must watch this. In a world divided by borders and rivalry, one Pakistani family chose something different: hope, peace, and love. A video shared on Instagram shows them celebrating India's T20 World Cup victory with a custom cake. Not just that, they even sang India's national anthem. This video is a powerful reminder that love has always been bigger than hate and that joy, when it's real, knows no boundaries. Take a look. People in Pakistan wearing Pakistan's jersey, singing India's national anthem, celebrating India's victory. Can't find a better note to end this edition of South Era Report. That's going straight to our social media platforms. We'll see you same time, same place tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching.